What was the most up things someone said to you? Story 1. In 2017, I found my 25-year-old son who had offed himself. He suffered from mental health issues, and though he was alive when I found him, I knew he wouldn't survive. During this time, a very religious person I've known all my life told me that I needed to see this as a learning opportunity to get closer to God, so that I wouldn't end up in hell for eternity like my son. Receiving that kind of response was not what a grieving parent should ever hear. Although there were many other things said and done during that period, this one stands out to me the most. I am deeply sorry that someone spoke those words to you. When someone is in deep grief, they deserve compassion, not judgment. Moreover, saying that your son was going to be in hell is unforgivable. Depression clouds the mind and makes it nearly impossible to think positively. I do not know your son's story, but I am confident that he adored you no matter what. Unfortunately, sometimes the hurt can become too much for one to bear, leading them to commit a permanent mistake. I hope your son rests in peace. Story 2. I had just lost my daughter at birth, and when I finally got home and was packing up my daughter's things and planning her funeral, I made a comment about how I'm a mother without a child, and my mother-in-law said that I wasn't a real mother because not only didn't I birth her but through C-section, but my daughter wasn't alive, so that makes me not a mother specially. This was repeated to me years later because I took Mother's Day hard, and my boyfriend at the time got frustrated by my whining and said I wasn't a real mom. Reply: you carried your daughter for months, felt her grow inside you, and loved her whole life. You will always be a mother, and no one can ever take that away from you. I can't believe someone would ever say that. That's truly up. Story 3. My sister and I have different dads, and my mom divorced both of them. My sister's dad, who we'll call C, had split custody of her for years. He hated our mother and slowly saw my sister less and less, even wanting her to take a 3-hour bus ride alone between the ages of 9 and 12. My sister eventually stopped wanting to travel and just wanted to hang out with friends in our hometown. C got remarried, didn't invite my sister to his destination wedding, didn't facilitate a meeting with my sister's good grandma, who lives in England and came down for the wedding, and stopped paying child support, a big no-no as a government agent. He was a giant piece of scum and a total loser for missing out on his daughter's life. However, during a fight, but still unwarranted, my mother once told my sister, "Have you ever wondered why all the people in your life leave you? It's no surprise your dad wanted nothing to do with you." That statement has been burned into my memory and is partially why I went no contact with my mother. My sister lived with me for a few months. Unfortunately, my mother passed away later that year due to a surgical complication. My sister has decided to forgive and forget, but I always keep those hurtful words from my mom with me. This story really hits me hard. It's heartbreaking to hear how your sister's dad treated her, and even more devastating to learn about the cruel words your mom said to her. It's no wonder you went no contact with your mother. I'm glad your sister found solace in you during those difficult times. It's commendable that she's chosen to forgive and move on, but it's also completely understandable why you can't forgive those hurtful words. Remember, healing is a personal journey and everyone processes it differently. Sending you and your sister lots of strength and positive vibes. Story 4. When I was maybe 13, I had confided in my mom that I was having some depressing thoughts. She laughed at me and later told my dad. He called me downstairs and took out a giant atlas of the area. He opened it, pointed, and said, "These are all the bridges nearby. If you need a ride to one, let me know," and walked out of the house. I already knew my dad hated me, but this solidified that both my parents believed they'd be better off without me. Story 5. 10 years ago, my wife and I visited my parents for Christmas. Unfortunately, my father was too drunk to stand and asked to hold our 6-month-old child. We refused, but my mother, who was less drunk, asked me and we reluctantly said yes. Immediately after, she handed our baby over to my heavily intoxicated father. A week later, we informed them that we wouldn't attend family events if they drank around our children again. In response, my mother pointed at my wife and blamed her for all the family's problems. We promptly left their house. I think you did a good thing by not hesitating to rip the band-aid off. My advice is to always do what's best for you and your family. Story 6. On my wedding day, an aunt whom I haven't seen in 10 years came up to our table. My husband and I officially got married in the country where we live, which happened to be a foreign country to me. I am from another country and my husband doesn't speak my mother tongue. However, we decided to hold the wedding in my home country. This auntie came up to us during the reception, which is intended for congratulating the bride and groom, and started talking. She said, "You know, I pity your parents. You left them all alone in their old age and are their only child. Moving so far away from your parents is selfish. I would never wish to be in their position. I am so glad you're not my kid. It is such a pity. Your parents are such good parents and you abandoned them. I had a friend whose daughter moved abroad and she got cancer and died. Her husband got cancer and died too, and their daughter couldn't come to help them. I always liked you, thought you were a good kid. I would have never expected you to be so horrible to your parents. Your poor parents." She even started crying and everything, and she wasn't even drunk. My husband was giving the generic smile at first, but then he became bewildered when he saw my reaction, because he didn't even know what she was saying. For the record, my parents fully supported me moving away for a better life and better opportunities. They wanted me to get away from sexism and religion and people exactly like the aunt who said those hurtful things to me. They raised me to be independent and to make my own decisions. They always told me, "Your responsibility is not to take care of us. Your responsibility is to build yourself a good life and a good family and pay it forward by taking care of your kids." When I told my mom what that aunt said, she basically replied, "Ignore her. She's crazy." Story 7. When I was 14, my father had a heart attack on my birthday. I was at school when he had the first one and asleep when he suffered a fatal one. Our last interaction was over the phone when he told me to enjoy my birthday. I canceled all my plans and waited at home for my mom and sister. My mom said to me, "It's your fault your dad died." That guilt still haunts me, especially since my ex's mother later told me it's no wonder he died having to deal with you as a daughter. I'm so sorry to hear about the tragic loss of your father on your birthday. That must have been incredibly difficult to process, especially at such a young age. It's absolutely appalling that anyone would blame you for his passing, especially your own mother and your ex's mother. Please know that it's not your fault, and their hurtful comments are a reflection of their own issues and not a measure of your worth as a person. You deserve love, support, and understanding as you continue to heal from this heartache. Story 8. In the 6th grade, a boy I had a crush on told me, "I wouldn't date you if you were the last girl on earth. I would let the population die because you were so ugly." Throughout school, I heard the ugly comment every year from different people. I was even told to off myself multiple times because of my looks. Even now, as a married woman and mother of a 5-year-old son, I find it hard to understand why my husband is attracted to me. My mother also constantly commented on my weight and food choices. When stretch marks appeared on my legs, like many women in my mom's family have, my mom looked devastated. In high school, my so-called best friend told me that my depression was just for attention and no one cared anyway. When I was 7 to 11 years old, my mom's boyfriend constantly called me ugly and nicknamed me Howdy Doody because of my hair. He also called me stupid because I was clumsy like most kids. He even slapped me in the back of the head if I wasn't fast enough to do what he told me to do. Story 9. When I received a soccer scholarship to play in a different state, I was excited to tell everyone in my family. I told my mom and she said, "You're going to fail. You can't even keep your room clean and you expect to succeed halfway across the country by yourself?" I went from feeling invincible and on top of the world to feeling like scum under my mother's feet. I literally felt the joy and excitement leave my heart and be replaced with doubt and sadness. The worst part is that I lost my scholarship a few months later due to not having enough credits to transfer out of state. I have never fully recovered from that. I was severely depressed for a few years, but climbed my way out of it for the most part. Hearing that come from someone who is supposed to root and cheer for you no matter what is still the most messed up thing anyone has ever said to me. Story 10. When I was 11, I went with my friend and her family on a trip to Gatlinburg. They rented a nice cabin in the woods. It wasn't until we got there that I realized how homesick and terrified I was about being away from my parents. This was the first time I had ever been that far away from them, and it was really hard to get a hold of them on the phone because of the signal. So I just remember crying and sulking in my room a lot. Maybe a day into the trip, I remember being in a different part of the cabin from everyone else, but I could still hear what everyone else was saying in the living room. I heard my friend's parents, her older sister, and her boyfriend talking about me. They said I had ruined their trip because of my behavior and how unpleasant I was. Keep in mind, I'm only 11 years old on my first trip with someone else's family, and that's what they said about me. After that, I couldn't stand being around them, so it made the entire rest of the trip unenjoyable. I think we even left a day earlier than planned. As a young kid, I felt extremely terrible about it, all because, well, I couldn't control how I felt. They also never went out of their way to try and talk to me or make me feel better. They just kind of treated me like a nuisance the entire time. Well, when my friend and I got back to school the next week, she told me that her parents said I couldn't come over to their house anymore and we could no longer be friends. So that friendship ended. It doesn't seem like a big deal now, but it always stuck with me how crazy it is that grown adults could treat an 11-year-old like that with such disdain. I'm really sad to hear about your experience as an 11-year-old away from your family for the first time. It's a shame that your friend's family didn't take the time to understand your feelings of homesickness and fear, especially considering your young age. Instead of offering comfort and support, they alienated you and made the situation worse. The fact that they ended your friendship as a result of this incident is incredibly unfair and hurtful. I hope you've since realized that their actions reflect poorly on them, not you. Story 11. I was just talking about this with my friends. My friend's ex-partner is a terrible woman. After going out to drink, she calls my friend to help ward off creeps or to make sure that she gets home safe. However, when another girl is facing a similar situation, she's apathetic. She just stands by, watching, or even walks closer to the scene to be entertained. When my friend asked if she has any intentions to help, she responded negatively, saying that the victim got themselves into that situation by drinking too much or going there in the first place. She has even admitted to watching people getting and not doing anything about it. She had the chance to leave but didn't. Her excuse was that the situation was entertaining and the girl deserved it for putting herself in that scenario. It's ironic considering that she would ask other people to help if she were assailed or felt unsafe. By reading what you've written, it seems like she might be a sociopath who won't ever feel remorse. It is difficult for most of us to believe that people like her exist. They don't understand right from wrong and think that the behavior that benefits them is the right thing to do. I had a similar person in my life, and it's still difficult to fathom their behavior. All I wanted was for them to see how their actions hurts others and care, but that wasn't possible. Story 12. My mom married my stepdad when I was 4, and we moved out to my step-grandmother's ranch to work it. When I was 7, I was told to help my 9-year-old cousin learn about what to do. He whined and bitched about everything he has to do the entire time. I told my stepdad's mother about him not being too excited about it. Well, he's the oldest, so this ranch will be his someday, she'd said. I'm 7. I don't know how it works, so I asked. So I'll be working for Brad here someday? No, you're going to be a priest. There's no other use for children, was her answer. Story 13. My sister and I were in school and she spread lies and rumors about me that were both untrue and true, yet only appropriate for family to know. When I discovered what she had said, I informed our parents immediately. They were upset. She came home unaware of what was happening and claimed that she was late coming home because she had many friends at school. This was a small and close-knit school. When confronted with what she said, she showed no remorse. She said that no one liked me anyway, and her actions were what made her popular. She never apologized, corrected the lies she spread, or stopped her harmful behavior. She had friends, but I didn't. In that moment, I was in the 6th grade and she was in the 5th. We moved around and changed schools frequently, but she never stopped spreading rumors about me. The same thing happened every time we relocated. We are now in our 40s and she brags about being the popular one when we were children. I told her and her children how she threw me under the bus to become popular because no one would pay attention to her if she didn't trash her own brother. She pretended as if she didn't recall any of that ever happening and threatened me not to say anything like that in front of her daughters. I know you may feel obliged to stay in contact because of family, but you don't owe her anything. Story 14. I was in the military and had a long-term girlfriend. I was planning on giving her a ring when I returned from a 1-year deployment. On the night of us leaving, she called me and told me she wanted to break up after 8 years together, and I asked her what did I do wrong, and she said nothing was wrong, but said since I was going to Iraq and will probably die, she didn't want to deal with the issue while she was my girlfriend and rather break up to have less emotions when I get I hung up and never spoke to her again. Story 15. My therapist told me I faked my OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, for attention because it magically went away when I was 13. It blew back up a few years later, and he didn't believe my family when we tried getting me treatment until my mom sent him a video recording of my verbal compulsions. But by then, it was too late and my OCD had already taken over and was difficult to treat. That was 4 years ago, and I'm still struggling with that same OCD to this day. If he wouldn't have been so ignorant as to call me a liar or something that quite literally destroyed my passions, maybe I would have been able to get proper treatment. I can't imagine how frustrating and disappointing it must have been for you to have a therapist who didn't take your OCD seriously. It's really disheartening that they doubted your experiences and only acknowledged the issue after receiving video proof. The delay in getting proper treatment must have been incredibly challenging for you. I hope you've found a more empathetic and supportive therapist since then who is dedicated to helping you overcome your struggles. Story 16. I dated in freshman year of high school. I was 14 years old at that time. We broke up after 9 months, largely due to the fact that I struggled with a very intense depression due to my dad abandoning me that year and bullying. 3 years later, we ended up working at the same food place. My ex-boyfriend apologized for not being more sensitive to my issues. I said, "Don't mind it." I totally understand how he couldn't handle what I was going through. We were young, no hard feelings. He and I were now cool and working fine together. His dad came in one day and ordered food from us. I overheard him laughing to my ex-boyfriend that he was surprised to see me working there and shocked that I was allowed to work somewhere with knives. I struggled with self-harm during my depression. A 50-something-year-old man said that about the choices a 17-year-old made at 14. My ex-boyfriend just kind of awkwardly shocked/nervous laughed, not maliciously, and went back to work. Story 17. I was really sick from gastroparesis last year, and my ex was mad because I needed a lot more of his help around the house and with our son. I had just seen a surgeon and they were talking about a total gastrectomy. During the argument, he started laughing and I said, "What is so funny?" And he said, "Whenever you're a I just think about how you're probably going to die." Joke's on him now. He's my ex and I'm doing much better and not going to die anytime soon. Story 18. My dad used to get drunk regularly, like 15 bottles of wine a week minimum. No exaggeration. He regularly said stupid like, "You made me blind." I was quite sad sometimes when my siblings and I would be having to help him get to bed. On more than one occasion, he'd say to us, "You ruined my life. I wish you were never born." Mom would always shout at him the next day, but it still wouldn't stop him. He stopped drinking so much and never said it to our young sister.
Please leave your story down below in the comments. I would absolutely love to make a video about them in the future. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, peace.